It's a pleasure to be here today, and I've got a good slot just as everybody's coffee is kicking in. My name is Veronica Davis. I am, by training, a transactional lawyer, both in private practice and now in-house. Previously, I was at Davis Polk & Wardwell in their New York and London offices, and today I am senior counsel at Airbus, leading mergers and acquisitions. The scope of my work now is indeed full acquisitions of companies, but also divestitures, joint ventures, and minority investments. The work I do for the Airbus Group, so it's across for commercial, military, helicopter, and freight manufacturer divisions, and my work is global. To set the stage here, I should clarify that class actions hold an important place in the legal fabrics of modern society. The access to justice benefits described by plaintiffs and their lawyers are real and valuable. But in my role, I represent a public multinational corporation. I need to look at class actions from the defendant's perspective as well. I must protect Airbus from falling afoul of the law in the first place, and I need to make sure it is protected from frivolous or opportunistic lawsuits. So it is through this lens that I approach the discussion on class actions here today. So, I'm excited to be in the presence of so many talented litigators. And I'd like to talk to you about our relationship, the relationship between transactional lawyers and litigators, and in particular, class action litigators. Because I'll cut to the chase, we need you. Transactional lawyers spend a lot of time thinking about what could go wrong in the abstract. Usually, it's in the abstract on a boilerplate. But you are the people who deal with what actually does go wrong. You operate in reality, we operate on the forecast. Transactional lawyers never want to spearhead the deal that becomes a cautionary tale. And some litigation risk somewhere down the line is almost inevitable. But class actions really put us on edge. There is certainly the potential for huge financial exposure, but the very public nature of class actions and resulting reputational damage can be disastrous for brand equity and consumer confidence. Of course, my job is to minimize the liabilities and maximize the rights of Airbus, but at its core, my job is to protect the brand and its reputation. And this is where you come in. If we think of transactional lawyers as the builders of corporate architecture, carefully structuring policies, M&A activity, product launches, etc., then litigators are the firefighters, first responders when something is already burning, or smoldering with the potential to ignite. Too often, these two worlds operate in silos. But what if we flipped the script? What if we looked at class action litigators not only as firefighters, but also as fire marshals, trained to identify risks and stop the fire from starting in the first place? Because if you think about it, no one knows the fault lines better than you do. You know the plaintiff theories that are gaining steam. You know which industries have targets on their backs. Transactional lawyers don't know these things unless you tell us. We don't see what you see. We're too busy reading a 200-page SPA. So let me show you what this alternate collaborative universe could look like. If we take my work in M&A, there are multiple ways that a successful completed transaction could lead to a class action lawsuit, before we even sit down to a closing dinner. Here are a few examples of things that keep M&A lawyers up at night. First, we have the typical disclosure-based claims, where plaintiffs will claim insufficient disclosure. Sometimes it's a frivolous claim, but it can also be legitimate if the disclosure is incomplete or inaccurate. Second, fiduciary duty claims, which can assert that corporate leadership is acting in their best interest rather than that of its shareholders. Third, post-closing damages for underperformance. The story goes like this. Post-merger integration was not successful, the assets we acquired underperformed, and allegedly, management should have known better. Fourth, competition class actions from customers or competitors, whether following a public enforcement decision or as a standalone claim. These can be in the form of gun-jumping breaches, abuse of dominance claims, price fixing. Fifth, integration class actions that arise from the chaos of integration. policy harmonization, employee communications, product transitions, IT migrations. The closing to day 100 window is one of the riskiest periods in the entire corporate lifecycle. And finally, sixth, where I spend a lot of my time, inherited class action risk for the buyer in M&A. Let's say we're acquiring a company. We perform customary due diligence. We don't find any historical, pending, or threatened class action against the business. The litigation rep is clean. Nothing is disclosed by the target. Are we safe? Or is there a dormant class action risk embedded in the business? What if the target's cybersecurity policy has weaknesses that lead to a data breach? GDPR class action? What if subscription agreements that auto-renew don't have a clear opt-out mechanism? Automatic renewal class action? What about misleading marketing schemes leading to customer class actions or consumer class actions? Or inadequate working conditions leading to employee claims? Or environmental issues leading to local resident claims? The list goes on. Deal lawyers know, in theory, that these risks exist. But it's not the primary lens through which diligence on the target is performed. We are focused on whether contracts are enforceable, whether a target has the requisite certificates to operate, whether their intellectual property is protected, whether their taxes are paid. The deal team is looking for risks that affect valuation, enforceability, operational continuity, not risks that will trigger a plaintiff lawyer's imagination. If dormant class action risk is not identified, it cannot be figured into the negotiation of the purchase price and allocation of liabilities. That is loss of value right off the bat. And worse, nobody is focused on the remedies that need to be put in place day one post-completion. So I don't view class action risk in M&A as a litigation problem. It's a deal problem with litigation consequences. So how do we, as transactional lawyers, mitigate these risks? I come back to my original point. We should involve our litigators early. The fire marshals, installing fire alarms and clearing emergency exits. I am fortunate enough to sit across the hall from our litigators at Airbus, and I get a lot of free advice on how to avoid common pitfalls. And the advice is regularly evolving as the landscape changes by jurisdiction or subject matter. But this is an interaction that I solicit, and I am grateful for, and the Airbus lawyers are happy to oblige, because as a European company, we still see class actions as a foreign phenomenon to avoid at all costs. But despite my helpful colleagues, I would argue that we need more regular, universal exchange between transactional lawyers and the litigators of the legal community as a whole, and fewer silos. We need to bring class action litigators into the room before the ink even dries. Here are 3 practical ways that we can accomplish this. First, M&A diligence should include some dormant class action review. An expert eye should look at consumer-facing contracts, employee contracts, privacy protocols, and other hot-button issues that may uncover a latent class action. A few hours of upfront diligence is a well-worth investment to avoid an incriminating headline in the future. We need your support in knowing where to focus diligence. You know about the uptick in ESG class actions, AI class actions, well before us. The panelists just yesterday highlighted that the EU Product Liability Directive is going to encompass software, and that the UK is likely going to follow. That's relevant to deal teams. A second action item, let's involve class action litigators in integration planning, not just in the deal phase, but immediately after signing. Class actions can arise not only from historical conduct, but from the volatile integration period. There are countless of operational work streams, and everyone is focused on getting their jobs done quickly and making sure it is done technically and correct and complete. This is a stressful period with an inordinate amount of moving parts. If litigators are involved early, they can spot the exact places where a change in practice could later be argued as evidence of wrongdoing, concealment, or customer deception. And the easiest solution to apply with arguably the biggest return on investment is the third one. Roundtables and risk radar sessions, where class action litigants educate their transactional counterparts on the areas that are ripe for acclaim, current trends, and common mishaps. Just for the M&A process alone, transactional lawyers need to be taught or reminded that corporate housekeeping is key. The board process and minutes need to be sound and documented. They need to reflect real deliberation and not just attendance. Management projections need to be created and owned by management and not the bankers. They are critical because they feed into fairness opinions and proxy statements. Banker fee structures need to be transparent and provide the right incentives to avoid banker conflicts. Disclosure needs to be up-to-date and accurate, but we should also avoid over-disclosure that creates unnecessary vulnerabilities. Even when we, as transactional lawyers, are equipped with these basics, the world keeps changing. We are not even receiving the client updates that our litigators do. We are not plugged in the same way, so this must be a continued, ongoing conversation. And even if I magically became an expert in US class actions overnight, because that's where I'm qualified to practice law, that's still not enough. This year alone, I worked with the following jurisdictions: the US, Spain, Australia, the United Kingdom, Morocco, Malaysia, France, and Germany. Oh, and as yesterday's mass torts panelists pointed out, parent company liability is creeping into Dutch courts, where the Airbus topco sits. So add another relevant jurisdiction to my list. So I'm going to need a big community of experts to fill me in here. And that's the brilliance of this Global Class Actions Symposium, for a fruitful exchange of information and ideas. But someone needs to bring the transactional folks into the fold. So to summarize, in the M&A context alone, we need you for diligence, integration, and your general guidance on the latest developments to set ourselves up for success. Next time you send a client update, ask yourselves whether transactional clients could also use this information. It's not spam, it's valuable. I'll leave you with this. Transactional work is about building value, and litigation is often about salvaging it. But the sweet spot, the place where both teams create the most value, is prevention, when we combine transactional foresight and litigation hindsight. Companies will make better decisions, deals are structured more intelligently, customers are treated more transparently. And the deal function transforms from a cost center, the legal function transforms from a cost center to a strategic asset. So let's keep talking, let's keep sharing, let's build bridges between our practices so that the next class action is the one we prevented, not the one we had to survive. The team today has prepared a fantastic lineup for you, and as you participate in sessions on securities class actions, big tech, or competition claims, I challenge you to ask yourselves whether we could have used our fire marshals before a fire broke out. Thank you.